Thank you. Thank you for coming out on a very cold Sunday morning to sit in stillness, to sit in silence, to sit in the company of others, to support our practice as a whole. Thanks, folks online, for being here with us today. It's good to see everybody. Thank you. This talk I've entitled Bringing the Outside In. But I was thinking it could be the reverse too, bringing the inside out. Either way, you could take it either way. And it's based on a saying that I've been contemplating the past few months. I brought this here to show you. I had this up at an art show several months ago, and I really love this saying, and it's caused me to reflect and is the inspiration for this talk. And I'm going to leave this painting here at the Zen Center. So if somebody would like to have it, you're welcome. If you'd like to make a donation to the Zen Center, then please do. That's in the spirit of the founding advocate, and he would calligraphies and then offer them for donation to the Zen Center. So this calligraphy reads, recite a poem while viewing the moon and flower. And this one is for this character here means moon and then flower, and to recite, to chant, something like that. That's the spirit behind it anyways. That's the sense of it. So I'm going to just put that in front here. Hopefully it works out.
Recite to the moon or flower? Is that what you said?
Yes, recite it doesn't say the word to in there, they're just 4 characters, but that's the sense of it. Yeah, recite it to the moon, to the flower. So why does this phrase speak to me? Maybe it doesn't speak to you. I go, what is it? And what the heck does that have to do with what we're doing here? Right? We're practicing Zen, right? We're just sitting meditation. So what is this with the flower and the moon? Well, we all, these are things that unite us, right? The moon, who doesn't have some relationship to the moon? It's something that we all share, right? The moon is it's just a symbol of something universal. If you're in the United States, you can see the moon. If you're in Africa, it's the same moon. If you're in Japan, it's the same moon. It's a symbol of unity. And then the flower, right? The flower is a symbol of not just beauty, but also diversity. I'll just give you a little bit of background here. As a child, my family are city folks. They're urbanites, and this idea, Zen. If you start to read Zen Buddhism, you'll see it is replete. It is full of reflections on the natural world. Everywhere you look in the Zen writing, you'll find some writing that connect us deeply to the natural world. And this is kind of foreign to me, growing up with parents that were more, they're wonderful, lovely people, urbanites and my father actually, I have to give him credit, he was a great gardener and he was very good with his hands, very, very good with his hands. So he imparted upon me a love of gardening for sure. My mother, on the other hand, she would see an insect and just, smash it. That was her. Anything that was inside that belonged outside was dead in our house. That's just how that was her kind of reaction. And even to this day, it's hard to think about recycling for her. Like, Mom, shouldn't this be recycled? Oh yeah, I guess I should put that in the recycling bin. And my father just kind of gave up on trying to do that, but I have to say something. And as I grew up, as a small kid, I loved frogs for some reason. I just love frogs and toads. I had pet frogs and toads in a little aquarium. And I my dad up on the phone, Dad, can you buy me some crickets at the store? He would get a kick out of, here he was in his fancy job as an engineer, and his son would be calling him up asking him to buy crickets and bring them home. So he'd go through the store and get a bag of crickets, especially in the winter when they're all dead. But in the fall, when they were plentiful, love to go out in the field in the backyard and pick up flat stones and see what kinds of creatures were lying out there. And inevitably, I'd pick up one stone and there'd be like 3 crickets. Oh, my frogs would love these. And I grab them and put them in the tank and watch them gobble it up. And it just was such a source of joy. And of course, as I know, this is a 9-year-old boy, 8-year-old boy. And as I was a swimmer. I swam competitively in college as well as in high school, and started when I was young, about 7 years old. And my favorite stroke, you know where I'm going with this? What?
Breaststroke.
The breaststroke.
It looks like frogs.
Looks like a frog kick, And I never thought about it at the time, but I watched those frogs swimming all the time, and just the way they, just like, and I that's how I learned how to. I think they were some of my first swim instructors. I did well. That was my favorite stroke. And I never. It's only more recently that I put those two things together. Like, oh, those little creatures were teaching me how to swim, right? And just you can see the way that those springy legs, and they're so strong. They're so powerful. Just thinking about it gives me some feeling of love and joy. And as I grew up, I loved the study of biology. High school biology was interesting to me, and learning about animals and things and anatomy and that kind of thing was very interesting to me. So I decided when I went to college, maybe I'll be a veterinarian. But it's funny because there's no vets for frogs. There's vets for dogs and cats, which I didn't have any experience with. There's vets for horses and cows, which I didn't grow up on a farm. And so one summer I decided to work with a vet, and I did it maybe a few times. And I went to, he was a large animal vet, and he would work with horses. I rode a horse maybe one time in my life. And this guy had so much knowledge of horses. So much so, you know what a vet does with horses? Does anybody know what the vet does?
Well, it depends on the
Depends.
horse.
Depends on what they need.
What I saw, I'll tell you what I saw. He had a very long glove, rubber glove that went up to his shoulder. And he would stick his hand up the butt and pull out all the manure, and then test it for various things.
I'm surprised the horse would tolerate that. I wouldn't tolerate that.
Well, the horse was okay with it. And tested, put the ultrasound and all of these things it was doing there. And I thought, I'm not at home anymore. So I had to, think like, now I'm studying biology, and being a veterinarian doesn't quite match with my experience as a youth. But I persisted with it a little bit longer until we had to, in college, dissect frogs. And I was like, no, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this.
That's what I was thinking.
And I had to dissect frogs. And I actually live frogs, not just dead frogs. They were alive.
Oh, no.
And this really turned me off to the field. In general, I started shifting towards ecology. And at the same time, parallel to this, I was studying religion. I took a religion class out of the blue because I needed an elective. I was a BA in biology, and I needed an elective. And first year I started studying religion, and I liked it so much I started taking more classes with the same teacher. And I started seeing some connections between biology and religion, especially with these teachers, they were saying, there's a connection between the way that we view the world and a kind of a spiritual crisis that's happening around the world right now. The ecological crisis. This is in the 1990s, where the big thing was acid rain. And I remember one of my bio teachers saying, that rain coming out there right now, that's acid rain. And I thought, doesn't burn my skin, but yeah, I guess it's the pH is low in that water. And so it touched me, on a kind of a physical level or emotional level, that the biology teacher was pointing this out, and I'm concerned. And then in the religion, they were saying, the heart of the ecological crisis is a spiritual crisis. That the way that we see the ecology is a reflection, or I should say, the way that we act with the ecology around us is a reflection of the way that we perceive the ecology around us. This made me think about, okay, well, how do I see ecology? How do I see the world around me? How do I see the environment? And what tools are there that I can change or shift out of that way of seeing? So it became apparent that, well, I'm really not very conscious of the natural world. I don't feel a sense of closeness, maybe like I did when I was a little kid with the frogs and so I didn't feel. And certainly when we were dissecting animals, and there wasn't the same feeling of love there. It was more of a kind of control mentality, and the sense that as humans, a kind of a superiority attitude, that humans are better above the natural world. And so I realized that this I was being taught, actually, and reflecting on, could this possibly be a problem? Could this possibly be a problem? Well, yeah, it is. It's a way that we think about our environment, our ecology. And all of these religions that I was studying, they all have something to say about how to treat the natural world, all of them. I just fell in love with Buddhism. I'm not saying it's better than the others. I just fell in love with Buddhism. And so that's kind of where it's kind of where I'm coming from. And when so let me just say this, the general way we think of the natural world around us is that it's a stage, right? Can you get behind that? That we see the natural world as a kind of a stage on which we're born, we live, and then we die. And the world itself is a stage that we kind of walk on. But the Buddhist view is different than that. It says that actually the environment is not a stage. So that's what I want to kind of reflect on. So what if the environment is not this stage, what is it? What is this environment? And one way to think of this is that nature emerges as a human self, as conscious self-awareness, reflecting on itself. So Dogen says it like this. He says that you go forward and experience myriad things is delusion. That's our general orientation, that we go forward into the world and experience this and this. I'm going to check this out. Now I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to meet that person. He says that way of perceiving the world is a form of delusion. It's a way of separating the self. I'm here, you're there. I'm going to meet somebody that I don't know, or I'm going to do something that I haven't done, or I'm going to repeat something that I've done. Then Dogen says that the myriad things go forth and realize themselves is enlightenment. Right? This is this man we are celebrating today, his birthday. That the myriad things go forth and realize themselves is enlightenment. It's a different orientation. It's a different orientation to the world. That We are not these individual, we have this individual self, and yes, we do go forward and experience myriad things. Yet there's another aspect of the self that, from the viewpoint of enlightenment, we are not this individual isolated self meeting all kinds of people and things. Rather, the whole universe is the self. That I'm talking to myself here. Right? I'm not talking to somebody new. I'm talking to myself. Right? We have two eyes, right? We all have two eyes. We share these two eyes. Isn't that interesting? We have a nose. I've got a nose. I've got one nose, not two. I've got two ears. And I got one mouth, right? I've got two hands. I know Dogen said when he come back from Japan, they asked him, well, what did you bring back with you from Japan after your training in the temples there? This is in the 13th century. In China, thank you. What did you come back with? That teacher came back from these great sutras. This teacher came back with these esoteric teachings. What do you got for us? Dogen's teaching was, my nose is vertical and my eyes are horizontal. Well, I knew that. That's it. That's what you got. But we don't really see it. And how close we are connected with animals too, right? They got two eyes and they're both the same size. There's a song there. It's a Sesame Street song teaching children about eyes. I got two eyes and they're both the same size. Isn't that wonderful? What if one eye was bigger than the other? But they're not. This is Zen, right? There's no miracles except that you see that you're, right, symbolically, the nose is vertical, goes up and down. It doesn't go sideways. Wouldn't that be strange if your nose went that way? Your ear was on top of your head. It's right here. It happens to be right here. And if we look at animals, they have the same morphology. If you look at a bat, have you ever seen a bat skeleton? It almost looks human. I mean, it's amazing. We went to the Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C., and we saw these bat skeletons. And they looked, I mean, the only difference was the fingers were really long. I mean, but yet, if you look at it, you think, oh, that's a bat. Even a rat, right? The ears are on the side of the head, the nose, the eyes here. Wow. Interesting. Isn't that interesting? That's what we want to cultivate. Interest in that ordinary. The ordinary is the profane. That's what we say in Zen. The ordinary is the profane. And we cultivate an interest and curiosity in the ordinary. The sun is shining. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Especially when it's so cold out, right? And the cold, actually, it's embracing. We get so hot, stuffy rooms, and go out and get the fresh air, you feel good. Get that good, fresh oxygen. All right. So, to come back here, I want to touch on this. When I was studying my last year in college, I had this opportunity to study a interreligious dialogue that took place in the 1970s. My question was, like, if all these religions are really good, for the most part, they're saying that basically take care of the environment, take care of the elderly, take care of children, take care of the orphan, right? Serve. They're all saying the same thing. Why are there wars going on in the name of religion? You know? And so that was my guiding question. And it led to the study of something called interreligious dialogue or interfaith dialogue, and how different religions have kind of different cultures come together to have conversations. And actually, I was surprised to find that this has been happening for hundreds of years. Interreligious dialogue. It's not a new thing. And so there was actually a dialogue that took place in the 1970s, not too far from here, on the on the Rosebud Reservation in, was it South Dakota? Yeah, South Dakota, between Lakota medicine people and Jesuit missionaries. And it took place over a 3-year period where they would meet periodically, once a week or once every couple of weeks. And there was over 1,000 pages of minutes that my professor, who was who studied extensively with indigenous people and was even himself an adopted member of a particular tribe, shared with me these minutes of the meetings. And it was a fascinating study. And I was 21 and reading through all this stuff as a young person and trying to understand. And he said, look at how, he pointed out, he said to me, what I want you to do with these minutes is find out where all the places where indigenous people, how they talk about the environment, how they talk about the natural world. That's what I want you to really focus on. And that's what I did. I looked through and look at how they think about the natural world. There's something here that I can learn from, and that I think we, coming from a Western society, Western-based society, can learn from indigenous people. And there's a whole history there that is we can go into, but I just want to focus here right now on what we can learn, what we can learn from indigenous peoples. And one of the things that I found, and then my teacher also pointed out, is look at how they're talking about the mountains and the animals and how their prayers are said, because they compared the prayers of the Lakota to the prayers of the missionaries. And one Lakota medicine person was quite critical. He said, when we pray this way, we're talking to animals. And he even made reference to praying over the mountains or through the mountains, sending his prayers through the mountains. Right? And this is a common kind of practice amongst indigenous peoples around the world. It's not just for Lakota, but also Haiti, the indigenous religion there, the voodoo, is a practice. It's an indigenous way of seeing the environment. And you can find this if you continue to study indigenous people. Now, I don't want to make this into a, what's the word I'm thinking of? We appropriate things that maybe we shouldn't be, or we glamorize these kinds of practices, make them seem like somehow extraordinary. So we need to be careful about doing that, because remember, the ordinary is what's sacred. Not that the extraordinary isn't, but we do this like, oh, that's really cool. Or we think the other way, that's polytheism, or make it a kind of a negative thing. And we don't really see it for what it is. So when I came across this saying, something resonated with me, and it took me a while to make that connection back to the Lakota and this idea of praying to animals, praying to the sun or to the moon. But I think there's something very powerful in here that we can ourselves begin to practice. And we can not just learn from indigenous people, but even the teachings within Buddhism have teachings like this. Consider, the Buddha was enlightened in a forest. He sat under a tree. The tree, if it wasn't for that tree, there wouldn't be any enlightenment. Mahakashapa, his first disciple, right? He was enlightened by a flower. He saw the flower and he smiled. And the Buddha, that moment was a transmission of the Dharma from the Buddha to his student, Mahakashapa. And then there's a story in the 1700s of Ryokan. You know who Ryokan is? A famous Japanese poet. you should read his poetry. It's just, again, full of references to the natural world, the seasons, the rain, all of that. And there's a story about him. He was very, very poor, and he did that intentionally. He had this hut, he called it the 1 pint rice hut, where he said, all I need is 1 pint of rice a day, I'm good. And he would go out and beg for that rice. And sometimes he would come back with flowers in his begging bowl. And one time, a thief came in. A thief came into his hut. He had nothing in there. The thief couldn't find anything, and he was really disappointed. So he started to leave, and Ryokan noticed him. He said, "Wait a minute, don't go. Let me give you my robes. I'll give you my robes." And the thief was just kind of bothered by that. He said, "I can't believe this." And he took them. Didn't really want them, but he took them, and he ran off. And it was in the middle of the night. The full moon was out there, and Ryokan says, "I wish I could have given him the moon. This is yours. This isn't somebody else's. That moon is your moon. Right? That moon is our moon. This world is our world, and you are the world. Right? I don't want to say that like cliche. You are the world, but you are the world. You are the universe. And that's the Buddhism. That's the Buddhism saying. So I want to. I'll close with a poem from a Chinese poet. He says, this is from Su Tong Po. He says, "The sound of the valley stream is itself the vast eternal tongue. Are not the colors of the mountains the pure body? Are not the colors of the mountains the pure body? Since evening, 84,000 verses." This isn't the Dharma talk. You've been listening to the Dharma talk when you're sitting zazen. That's the Dharma talk going. Another day, how could I quote them to others? Good luck. Well, I'll close with my own poem. Humans land on the moon. The earth is a flower 240,000 miles away. Who in this Milky Way rides the ever-glowing sun? Thank you. So, you guys got questions? Feel free.
All right. For some reason recently, I've been getting into a conversation with the guys down at OCC about the separation from the natural world.
Now, can you say what OCC is?
It's the Omaha Correctional Center.
Omaha Correctional Center, okay.
Yeah. And it has struck me actually this coming week, I'm going to talk more about, for people in prison, there's a serious lack of contact with nature. But if you think about it, in our society, all the growing pains, the deaths of despair, that sort of thing, often I just view that as people just becoming so unacquainted with the natural world.
Yeah.
And how the natural world so often brings us, back to who we are and where we fit and things. I don't know, just
beautifully said. Showju, thank you for that. Yeah, the importance. It's really, I think, and in today's world, we really have to be conscious of making the connection. It can't be a passive thing. we've always been a part of the natural world, but now it seems pressing to really acknowledge it, to really make it something that we're more aware of.
I guess one more observation is that, when I have the opportunity to spend time in nature, it really is like Dogen said. Things come forth.
Yeah, nice.
Express themselves.
Right.
That is interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Folks online, thank you so much for being here with us. Is that Jodo with us? Jodo, great to see you. Thank you. Yeah, Navab and Seikai, Kathy, thank you. See some other folks there. Diane, yeah.
I was just thinking there is something, it sounds like a plug for Zazen, but like when I have sat, especially in session, and then gone outside, I mean, it's just it's so apparent like how amazing, just like any little thing is like the sky. I remember when I first started sitting in my little group, and I would on Saturday mornings, and it was in a little Unitarian Universalist church. I lived across the street. Then I would come outside and I would just look at the tops of the trees in the sky, and I'd be like, wow, that's just so amazing. And it was just like you're saying, like the very normal little everyday thing is the part that's just remarkable, and to have that appreciation is like to have the wow, and then to have the everyday, like have that balance, like whatever anyway, it's just I don't see it. I don't see it unless I spend time. Honestly, I can't, it's really hard to see if I don't spend some time quieting.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for bringing it back to Zazen. That's why we practice. That's why I practice. Yeah. I mean, when I first met my teacher, she said when you said Zazen, the grass becomes electric. It's like, what? I want to know what that is. You're on LSD or something, Yeah. But no, it's just, you just sit, and things get more vibrant. Yeah, see that.
So taking a class with the rabbi, he brought up a point that it used to be that a lot of God was in a place. It was considered to be a place, whether it be the Holy Land or for the Lakota, the Black Hills. And after like destructions of temples and wars, then it couldn't be a place anymore. It needed to be more portable. So then it switched to a transcendent deity. And we are so mobile in this, especially now in the 21st century, that we don't want to see it in the here and now. We still want it to be this abstract philosophical thing. So I think it's important to not make it into something else, some mental formation, that it's right here, like he was saying, in who we are, in what we do. And I don't know, what you've said really spoke to me.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and that's true if we, I think it's true. Don't you think if we believe in God, then it's generally, not always, not for everybody, but generally it's like a transcendent God.
Exactly.
And if we don't believe in God, it's a transcendent God that's not believed in.
Right. Exactly. I believe in an immanent God, not a transcendent God. Right?
What's that?
Immanent. In the world, not of the world.
In the here and now.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's like the myriad things coming forth.
Right, exactly. Yes, the myriad thing, right? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to wait till you're dead to go to heaven.
Exactly. But it's interesting because I think that's what's really gotten us away from seeing nature that way. Because it's not so much now a place, it has to be portable, and in order to be portable, it had to be an abstract concept. I just found that very fascinating.
Yeah. And this is where our effort has to come in. This is because we are also a part of this whole process. It's not me going out and worshiping God out there. It's this whole universe, period, with no separate self. Right, like if the jug of water is half full, it sloshes around in there, and there's space in there. But if the jug is completely full and you try to slosh it, there's no sloshing, and so you can't tell that the water is actually moving. that's more close to how we are in terms of the natural. There's no separation there. There's no sloshing around, and so it doesn't seem like we're even connected. It doesn't seem like there's some connect, but that's what, because we don't feel it, it's there 100%. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, I thank you for the talk, everything about it, and especially just being out in nature and how important it is for our well-being. And sometimes I feel like for most people, because we're all so super busy it can feel kind of like daunting to like, oh, it's one more thing I gotta carve out of my life, like carve out the time to get outside, and sometimes I can definitely see that like falling like to the wayside. But on just like a practical note, like I walk my dogs every day, and I live in the neighborhood, and I live in a neighborhood that has trees. And so one of the things that I'll do is I will just make it a practice as I'm walking the dogs to only notice the trees like around me when I'm walking. I will just look at every single tree, like as I'm walking, and I can literally in real time feel an effect in my body, like when I do that. And also I just found out that, and I haven't done it yet, but Fontenelle Forest rents snowshoes. So that sounds, you could do maybe a little snowshoeing meditation or something if you want to, but I won't. But anyway, it can be just something as simple as that, and it will literally have an effect. A positive effect.
A positive effect, that's what we want. And right, so thanks for bringing it home again. This is something that we should try to make practical. It's not that you have to do something extra different or something. I mean, it's nice if you can go for a walk in nature, but you need to exercise anyway, so why not? Right, go out there and walk or run outside, as long as it's not slippery. You can do it, or when you're practicing meditation. Right? The whole world is chanting the sutras. Maybe turn down the heater for the time that you're sitting, so that you can hear the birds out there. I open up the senses. So there's real practical stuff. Yeah.
On that note, I farmed for 15 years. And so growing food, especially while cultivating a practice of Zazen, is really eye-opening. And that connection you don't necessarily even have to go to, because the food that we eat and how it's grown, and all of that is a part of who we are, and is the natural world as we experience it.
Yeah, all our hats off to the growers of food. Thank you so much for doing it. I know you don't do it anymore. I mean, that's a lot of work though, right? Yeah. That's a lot of work.
I have no idea.
And probably doesn't get enough attention.
That's why I like the chant that we do at meal times, just we reflect on the effort
that brought us this food.
Grow things, you can, in the city of Ames, where I am from, the city is actually giving people money to grow prairie in their lawn.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so you can transform the space that you're in and make it add the biodiversity from the local region. We get loads of, we planted prairie there, and we get all kinds of insects and bees and things coming in the summer to our yard because of that, and animals like it too. So I think more people we have so many, there's not one right thing to do. There's about 1 million right things that are possible. So just keep your minds open. Riding your bike, that's great, right? Riding your bike to the Zen Center, fun, if you can. Or, little things like that when you can. Making the choice, seeing that you have choices of how you can. Some countries, I was watching this thing on the blue zones, and it was, some of you have heard that, but they were doing this thing on Singapore, and how 80% of the people don't drive cars. They've set up their society where it's too expensive actually to drive a car, and there's very, very little pollution. So there's myriads of ways. I'm not saying that we should all never drive cars. I mean, I'm dependent on cars. I love my car. People need cars, but there's also lots of different ways of living that can be different than what we do right now if we look and see.
I think Aaron.
Yeah, well, thanks for your talk, and it was kind of interesting, the mention of the Jesuits and the Native Americans, so thanks for kind of breaking up the Native American side of that. I've been to Jesuit schools for 8 years, so, and I studied a lot of the, like, kind of Catholic environmental, my background's Catholic, but environmental tradition, and one of the kind of neat things about the Jesuit way of looking at things, one of the big phrases of Saint Ignatius, who's the founder of the Jesuits, was find God in all things. And Pope Francis is actually, so he's the first Jesuit priest. He also wrote the first kind of environmental encyclical or letter to all Catholics, and it's called Laudato Si, which comes from a prayer of Saint Francis, where he says, "Praise be the sun." He talks about like Brother Moon, Sister Wolf, and it's kind of, it's like a very kind of different way within the Catholic tradition of thinking about nature, because the Catholic tradition and Christian tradition does emphasize that separation.
Right.
But Saint Francis is like one of the main, you just kind of want to,
and see, here's the thing is that all these traditions, including Catholicism, they have within them an environmental ethic, and it's bringing them up. I was just thinking of that song, "Joy to the world, a Savior's born. Let earth receive her King.
Let every heart prepare him room.
And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing." I mean, we don't see it though, but now we do. Now you do.
I also had a question just about the kind of distinction between us and the universe, because I guess when I think about nature, yes, there is kind of the healing aspect of it for us, but then like watching nature documentaries, it's also a place that's full of violence and competition and competition between individuals. Like you can't live without, in a sense, doing violence to other living things.
Yeah, that's the truth. That is true. Yeah.
So I guess could you kind of?
It ain't all peace and joy, is it? Right? That we live in a violent world of constant change, and in order for us to live, we devour other beings, and that's what we need to. I mean, that's why we say prayer, because we're giving thanks to those beings whose lives are no longer, because we only live because something else has to. This is a Buddhism. This is because that is. This is not because that is not. We are here absolutely 100% supported by the entire universe, and that includes the death of species now.
Even if you're vegetarian,
even if you're a vegetarian, you can't get out of it.
Well, even to cultivate the food. I mean, just all of that.
We can't get out of it. Yeah, that is it. There's a koan for you. Master Tozan was asked. He saw one of his disciples saw two birds fighting over a frog. There's my frog again. The frog was being torn apart limb by limb, and the student said to Master Tozan, "Why does it come to this?" And Master Tozan said, "Only for your benefit."
Wow.
So, chew on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you online. Thanks for being here. All right. Thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
before we close, we'll
Yes.
do announcements.
Announcements, yes.
So Karen can help me with this. Next Sunday is the sitting, which is an extended period of Zazen starting at 9. But always doing coffee afterward. And following that, we have a 3-day sesshin with Taizan and his teacher Sosan. So
First weekend in February. It's on loving kindness, because every February, because of Valentine's Day, we always do like metta or the loving kind, it's focus on loving kindness, so it'd be great to have y'all here.
So, yeah, registration online for that, I encourage people to participate in that, I think it's gonna be great. And if you can only do partial participation, just let us know. That's fine. And then follow that.
It's a great mystery. We have Kyoki's Memorial, so
Mm.
that will be, I think, the weekend after the
February
session.
10th.
Yep.
Yeah.
The 12th, I think.
10th, yeah.
10th, I'm sorry.
That's a special memorial service on a Saturday. And that's
What did you just say? I'm sorry, I'm a little deaf.
special memorial
Got it.
service on a Saturday,
Yes.
February 10th. Pardon?
10 till noon.
10 till noon, and all of that's potluck. So we love potluck, so.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a newsletter that'll be coming out in the next week or so that's always a good place. Website newsletter should have all the details about what's going on.
And as well, we have it in, non-digital form.
Oh, yeah,
Hanging on
paper.
the wall in the entryway, it's the schedule for January and February, so you can always figure out what's going on there.
Uh,
Taizan is with us too, and he'll be here for
4 or 5 months.
4 or 5 months.
I have a
So-
little, I have a couple little side trips, but mostly I'll be here, so I'm really grateful.
So
for-
please, support him by coming in and
Yeah, come in the
volunteer.
morning. Come sit in the morning.
Zazen. Volunteer is always welcome. Really come and take care of the temple, yeah.
And on that note, we're gonna start doing evening zazen. So that's pretty exciting. And that'll be Wednesday evening, so there'll be a schedule that will come out.
We're gonna do Wednesday evening, we're gonna do a little bit of, I don't exactly call it even yoga, mindful movement, just to get your body waked up, so then when you sit, it's not so excruciating. So then you can sit zazen, and then we're gonna have a little tea and conversation afterwards.
Ooh, I have a question. You gonna be able to do full moon ceremonies?
I hope so, we're working on that,
That'd be sweet.
I hope so,
Because sometimes we'd have them on a night closest to the full moon. So
Yep,
if
that's my
it
hope. My
used
hope
be
is to do it on the
Wednesdays,
Wednesday. I have to get clearance for that from my
I'm
teacher.
trying
You're waiting on clearance.
We're working on clearance.
Oh, okay, sure.
Oh, and did you want to mention your artwork?
Yeah, there's artwork out in the front, if anybody would like it, help yourself, and again, just make a donation to the Zen Center if that seems reasonable for you. All
It's
right,
very generous, I think.
Very generous, thank you.
you're welcome, thank you, please take it, take good care of it, all right? So we're close.
Is it your artwork?
Yeah, that's stuff that I drew. Calligraphy.
We move the cushions while we're.
I'll move back and forth and then do.
Okay, let's everyone move their cushions back